The night my parents celebrated finally kicking me out of their house, they actually opened champagne, laughed, and told everyone I was the family failure they were finally free from. I stood there with my suitcase in one hand and nowhere to go, listening to my own mother say, "Maybe now she'll learn what it's like to survive without us." What she didn't know, and what no one in that room knew, was that the house they were celebrating in wasn't really theirs anymore. I had lost my job that week, yes. I had hit rock bottom in every way they could see. But what they didn't see were the years I spent quietly covering their debts, fixing their mistakes, and signing papers they never bothered to read. So when my dad smugly walked to the door and locked it behind me like I was nothing, I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I just looked at the house one last time and waited. Because I knew something they didn't. And in less than 48 hours, the same house they threw me out of would come back to me, legally, completely, and in a way they would never see coming. My name is Emily Carter, I'm 28, married, and until recently, I thought I understood exactly where I stood in my family, somewhere between invisible and convenient. I wasn't the favorite, that was my younger brother, Tyler, the golden child who could do no wrong even when everything he touched fell apart. I was the responsible one, the one who fixed things quietly, paid bills when no one else could, and kept the peace no matter how badly I was treated. My husband, Daniel, used to tell me I gave too much to people who would never give anything back, but I always believed that if I just kept showing up, eventually they'd see me differently. Losing my job changed everything. Overnight, I went from being their silent safety net to their biggest embarrassment. The same parents who once relied on me started treating me like a burden they couldn't wait to get rid of. And the worst part? They truly believed I had nothing left, no power, no options, no way to stand on my own. But what they didn't realize was that long before I lost my job, I had already made one decision, one quiet, legal decision, that would change everything the moment they pushed me too far. Growing up, it was always clear that Tyler was the center of my parents' world, and I was just there to keep things from falling apart. When he wanted a new car at 19, they somehow made it happen, even though they were already behind on mortgage payments. When his first business idea failed, they called it a learning experience. When his second one burned through even more money, they blamed the economy. But when I asked for help paying off my student loans years earlier, my dad told me, "You're smart, Emily. You'll figure it out." And I did. I figured everything out, on my own. I worked full-time, built a stable career in finance, and slowly became the person my parents quietly depended on without ever acknowledging it. It started small, covering a late utility bill here, helping with a credit card payment there. Then it became bigger. One night, my mom called me in tears saying they were about to lose the house. I didn't hesitate. I dipped into my savings, paid what I could, and even helped them restructure some of their debt. What they didn't know was that I didn't just hand over money, I made sure I protected myself. I had seen this pattern too many times, watched them make reckless decisions and expect someone else to clean it up. So when the situation escalated and the bank got involved, I sat down with a lawyer, quietly, carefully, and made sure that if I was going to save that house, I wasn't going to be left with nothing if things went wrong again. Papers were signed, agreements were made, and while my parents thought everything went back to normal, the reality had changed in a way they never bothered to understand. Legally, things were no longer what they seemed. But life moved on, and I didn't bring it up. I kept helping, kept showing up, kept being the dependable daughter they took for granted. Even after I got married to Daniel, nothing really changed. If anything, it got worse. They started expecting my help as if it was owed to them. Tyler, meanwhile, kept drifting from one failed idea to another, always landing softly because my parents refused to let him fall. And every time something went wrong, somehow, I was still the one who stepped in to fix it. I told myself it was just temporary, that eventually things would stabilize, that my parents would appreciate everything I'd done. But deep down, there was always this quiet voice reminding me that appreciation was never part of the equation. Still, I ignored it. I focused on my career, on my marriage, on building a life that felt steady and secure, at least outside of my family. And for a while, it worked. I had a good job, a predictable routine, and just enough distance to convince myself I was finally okay. Until the day everything collapsed at once. Losing my job wasn't just a setback, it was the moment my entire position in the family shifted overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't the reliable one anymore. I wasn't the safety net. I was just expendable. And the way my parents reacted made it painfully clear that everything I had done for them meant absolutely nothing the moment I stopped being useful. The day I told my parents I lost my job, I didn't expect sympathy, but I also didn't expect the cold, almost immediate shift in how they looked at me. My mom didn't ask if I was okay. My dad didn't ask what happened. Instead, there was this heavy silence, followed by my father sighing like I had personally inconvenienced him. "So what's your plan?" he asked, his tone already impatient, like I was late on a responsibility I didn't even know I had. I tried to explain that I had savings, that I was already applying for new positions, that I just needed a little time to get back on my feet. But before I could even finish, my mom cut in sharply, "We can't support you, Emily. We've done enough." That word, enough, hit harder than losing the job itself. Because I knew, deep down, that they hadn't done enough. I had. Still, I swallowed it. I told myself they were stressed, that things had been difficult financially, that maybe they were just scared. But over the next few days, it became painfully clear this wasn't fear, it was rejection. They started making comments at dinner, subtle at first, then sharper. My dad joked about how some people get too comfortable and stop trying. My mom started comparing me to Tyler, saying at least he was ambitious, even if his ideas didn't work out. It felt unreal, like I had somehow been rewritten into the failure of the family overnight. Daniel was furious when I told him. He wanted me to cut them off immediately, to stop helping, to finally choose myself for once. But I wasn't ready for that. These were still my parents, and some part of me kept hoping this was temporary, that they would come around, that they would remember everything I had done. Instead, things escalated faster than I could process. One evening, I came home to find my suitcases sitting by the door. Not packed neatly, just thrown together like someone was trying to get rid of clutter. My clothes were wrinkled, some of my things missing entirely. For a second, I thought maybe something had happened, maybe they were cleaning, maybe it was a misunderstanding. But then my dad walked into the hallway, looked at me, and said it without hesitation. "You need to go." Just like that. No discussion, no warning, no conversation. I felt my chest tighten as I asked, "Go where?" And he shrugged. Actually shrugged. "You're an adult. Figure it out." My mom stood behind him, arms crossed, not saying a word, but her silence said everything. I looked at her, hoping, just hoping, for some sign that this wasn't real, that she would step in, that she would stop this. She didn't. Instead, she said something that I don't think I'll ever forget. "Maybe this will finally teach you responsibility." Responsibility. After everything. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, permanently. I stopped trying to explain. I stopped trying to defend myself. Because I realized, they had already decided who I was in their story. And nothing I said was going to change that. So I picked up my suitcase, adjusted my grip, and walked toward the door. My dad opened it like he couldn't wait for me to leave, and as I stepped outside, he added one last thing. "Don't expect to come back." I paused for just a second, then nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I knew something they didn't. And for the first time since losing my job, I wasn't scared anymore. I didn't go far that night. Daniel was waiting for me in the car just down the street, his jaw tight the second he saw my bags. He didn't ask questions right away, he just got out, took the suitcase from my hand, and pulled me into a hug like he already knew everything he needed to know. The moment I sat in the passenger seat, the reality hit me all at once. Not the job, not even the house, but the fact that my own parents had just thrown me out like I was nothing. Daniel drove us back to our apartment in silence, but I could feel the anger radiating off him. When we finally got inside, he turned to me and said, "You're done with them. Completely. No more money, no more fixing their mess." I nodded, but not for the reason he thought. Because for the first time, I knew I didn't need to fight for my place in that house anymore. I already had it. The next morning, I made a call I had been mentally preparing for years. I contacted the lawyer who had helped me back when my parents were on the verge of losing everything. He remembered me immediately, and when I explained what had happened, there was a brief pause before he said, "Well, that complicates things." That sentence alone told me everything I needed to know. Within hours, things were set in motion. Documents were pulled, notices were prepared, and for the first time, everything that had been quietly sitting in the background was about to come to light. Meanwhile, at my parents' house, life went on like they had just removed a problem. I found out later that they actually had people over that same night, celebrating, drinking, acting like they had finally taken control of their lives again. Tyler was there too, of course, probably enjoying the moment more than anyone. They thought they had one. They thought I was gone for good. What they didn't realize was that legally, they were standing in a house that no longer belonged to them in the way they believed it did. 2 days later, right on schedule, the bank made the call. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard every detail afterward. My dad answered, probably expecting a routine conversation. Instead, he was informed that there were serious issues regarding the ownership and financial responsibility tied to the property. At first, he laughed it off, confident, dismissive, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. But then the tone of the conversation changed. Questions were asked. Clarifications were made. And slowly, that confidence started to crack. Because the more the bank explained, the clearer it became that something wasn't adding up the way he thought it did. That was when the panic started. They pulled out old documents, tried to piece things together, called Tyler in like he could somehow fix it. But this wasn't one of his failed business ideas. This wasn't something they could ignore or spin into a lesson. This was real. This was legal. And for the first time, they were completely out of control. By the time my phone rang later that evening, I already knew who it was and exactly why they were calling. When my phone started ringing that evening, I just stared at the screen for a few seconds, watching my dad's name light up like nothing had changed, like he hadn't thrown me out less than 48 hours ago. I let it ring twice more before answering, calmly, almost casually. "Hello?" There was no greeting on his end, just tension. "Emily, what is going on with this house?" His voice wasn't angry like before. It was tight. Controlled. And underneath it, I could hear something I had never heard from him before, uncertainty. I leaned back against the couch, glancing at Daniel, who was watching me closely, and said, "I'm not sure what you mean." There was a pause, followed by papers shuffling, my mom's voice whispering something in the background, and then he snapped, "Don't play games. The bank just called. They're saying there are ownership issues. That your name is tied to everything." I let that sit for a second before responding. "That's because it is." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then my mom grabbed the phone. "Emily, what did you do?" Her voice had completely changed, no more coldness, no more superiority. Just panic. I exhaled slowly, not out of frustration, but out of release. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I fixed what you couldn't." I reminded them, calmly, clearly, about the night they were about to lose the house, about the money I put in, the agreements they signed without reading, the legal structure that was set up to protect that investment. "You didn't think it mattered at the time," I added quietly. "You just wanted the problem to go away." My dad cut back in, louder now, "This is ridiculous. You can't just take our house. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it was. I didn't take anything, I said. But you did throw out the person who owns it. That's when everything finally clicked for them. I could hear it in the way the room behind the call went completely silent. My mom's voice came back, softer now. Almost pleading. Emily, we didn't mean it like that. You know that. You can come back. We'll fix this. And there it was, the switch. The same people who had packed my bags and told me not to come back were now offering me a place in the very house they no longer controlled. I shook my head slowly, even though they couldn't see me. No, I said, my voice steady. You were right about one thing. I am an adult. I'll figure it out. My dad tried one last time, his tone shifting into something close to desperation. What do you want? That question, it landed differently than anything else. Because for years, I had wanted their respect. Their acknowledgement. Their support. But in that moment, I realized I didn't need any of it anymore. I want what's legally mine, I said. And I want you out of my house. The silence that followed was louder than anything they had said to me before. And for the first time in my life, I was the one in control. They didn't leave quietly. Of course they didn't. There were arguments, last-minute attempts to guilt me, even a few calls where my mom cried and said I was tearing the family apart. But this time, I didn't bend. I didn't fix it. I didn't step in to save them from the consequences of their own actions. Legally, everything moved forward exactly as it was supposed to. Within weeks, they were out of the house they once celebrated kicking me out of, and for the first time, they had to face life without someone cleaning up behind them. I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a party or post anything online. I just stood in that same living room one day, completely alone, and realized something simple but powerful: I wasn't the failure they made me out to be. I was the reason they had that life in the first place. And now, I finally had my own. As for my parents and Tyler, last I heard, they were still trying to figure things out. This time, without me. And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. If you've ever been treated like you're nothing until people need you, remember this: sometimes the strongest comeback isn't loud, it's legal. If this hit you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your story below.